Well, hi, thank you for being here. You're watching this video because you've either inherited some starter from a friend or a family member, or you've purchased my starter, Willow, that is available in my Etsy shop, boop, boop, in dehydrated form. So, dehydrated starter. It looks like a little flake of, I don't know, paper mache. And you can bring this back to life in just a few days. So here's what I like to do. I like to get a jar. Now I recommend this one that I have linked to in my guide. As your starter gets bigger and bigger, it also allows oxygen to get in. Mine's a little dirty, without anything else, without mold or flies or anything of that nature. But for these purposes, when you're just getting it going, any mason jar will really do. And so as you get it going, really all you need is about 1 tablespoon of starter. And in my packets that you'll get at least double that. So you can have a couple tries in case the first one doesn't maybe go exactly as you had planned. So you'll add some of the starter. Probably don't even need that much. And then you'll take 1/3 cup of water and 1/3 cup of flour. Now for flour, I prefer and always recommend at least an unbleached, and even more preferably organic. The cultures and microbes and all of that aren't going to survive as well, if at all, in a bleached flour. And for nutritional purposes and to stay away from pesticides and Roundup, your best bet for the most nourishment is an organic, unbleached. And I like to use white. Now, I've never kept a starter with any flour other than white flour. So I get questions a lot about, can I use einkorn? Can I use spelt? And I know people who have, and I'm sure you can. But when I speak to my starter, it is with the experience of using an unbleached organic white. So we'll start with 1/3 cup of flour. Boop. Pop that in there. And 1/3 cup of water. I just use the same measuring tool. And then you're going to take a spoon of some sort. I like to use wood and or rubber and silicone in my starter. I like to avoid stainless steel because stainless steel is actually antimicrobial. So a quick stir with stainless steel, not a big deal, but you don't want to store your starter in anything that is stainless steel. So now we want to mix it all up. And the water is going to begin to rehydrate those flakes. And then the flour that I've added is now working with that water to feed it. So it's kind of, you'll see it's kind of like chunky to start. You get it going, you scrape it down the sides, stir, stir, stir until you have a sort of a paste. You want to just keep stirring. Now, some notes. The first, at least few feeds, you're going to do equal parts water and flour. If you notice that your starter is getting really, really runny and maybe just has teeny tiny bubbles but never really kind of grows and expands, you might want to experiment using a little bit less water, maybe 1/3 cup of flour to 1/4 cup of water. Also, as your jar begins to fill, especially once you get it into this bigger jar, you can begin to discard. And I will share that in a moment. Let's just really get this nice and combined here. All right, it's nice and combined. We've got a happy starter. It's gonna be a little thicker, gooey, thicker than pancake batter, but definitely not like a dough. Now, as you begin to discard, as I mentioned, so as your starter grows, you will need to start to get rid of some to feed it. It helps with just the balance of microbes, plus you don't want it overflowing out of your jar before it's even ready. And that's where this book comes in. It's my Sourdough Sisterhood recipe book. And it's loaded with all kinds of recipes, like sourdough banana bread. I even have a sourdough bread pudding you can use your extra bread for. We've got cornbread. We've got tortillas. And each of these photos comes with an incredible step-by-step recipe. Different kinds of pies, from savory, whoa, to sweet, crumbles, pies, you name it. And you can use your starter before it's ripe and ready for these kinds of recipes. The only one I would reserve for a happy starter would be the pizza crust. But once this starts to double in size, once it has a lot of lovely bubbles and you can tell that it's alive, and once it floats, if you were to drop just a dollop about this big in a bowl of water, you should see that it floats right back up to the top. If it's sinking, it still needs some more love. To store your sourdough as it's getting going, I recommend, if you're using one about this size, that you take some sort of a napkin or cloth or tea towel, like the one I sell in my shop, which is actually right there. And then, so a little bit of extra oxygen can get through, but then you're gonna still seal it tight with that napkin on there with the lid. So it's getting some oxygen, but nothing else can get in. Happy starter. And then eventually, this jar is the jam. So there you have it. There are some tips for getting your starter ripe and ready for baking. For more information, you can check out my sourdough guide at myradicalroots.com/sourdough-guide. And you'll see all my resources there. Thanks for being here. Happy baking. I'm so grateful.